Hello, everybody. It's Kim Carpenter here, the founder of World Changing Women, where we support women with a fire in their belly to make a bigger difference, to know themselves as the world changers they are so they can make their greatest contribution. I am here today with my financial manager, Ruchi Pinniger. Hi, Ruchi.
Hi, Kim.
Hi, everyone. So let us know in the comments where you are watching from, and then also be thinking about what are your biggest questions right now around the loan and grant opportunities for women-owned businesses. I did get some questions ahead of time and we'll be looking at those, but if you don't mind, I just learned I'm using StreamYard for the first time, and it says it's better if I don't have also a Facebook window open. So if you can type in the comments right under this video, if you would please just let us know what questions you have coming up for you, then we will be sure to answer those. And Ruchi and I are also going to just talk a little bit in general about, what's going on. There's a lot of confusion about what to do, what to apply for, what I can and can't do. So we're going to try to demystify some of that for you. So Ruchi, why don't you tell them a little bit about what you're doing? Because Ruchi is in the middle of rebranding. I'm actually working for her. So I'm Ruchi's client and Ruchi's my client. So full disclosure. And we're just in the process of creating this whole new brand. So I would love for you to tell them about it.
Yeah, of course. My new brand is Watch Her Prosper. We're a small business services and advisory firm. And I am so committed to partnering with women like you to help you become prosperous and powerful around your finances. And this is the perfect opportunity to talk about that, because these loans and grants, I can't tell you how much information is coming at me. And I would consider myself fairly financially savvy, obviously, given the work that I do. And I know, it can be so overwhelming trying to decipher it and trying to understand, is it accurate? Am I getting it from a reputable place? And I'm seeing a lot of overwhelm from my clients, from other women.
Yeah, for sure. And I just want to take a minute and say how grateful I am to have you, because before I had Ruchi really managing my finances, and she does my personal books as well as my business books, and also gives me financial mentorship and advice. Before that, I just really avoided looking at my numbers. And, my bookkeeper would give me like a monthly report and a P&L and things like that. And I would just be like, okay, but I wasn't really empowered to make decisions based on what was going on with my money. And it was kind of like, if it's there, that's really great, but I would love to just not have to look at it. And I've changed my whole mindset around my money and my finances, and which has also helped me be very prepared for this time when I have to Ruchi, I got to apply for this thing right now. Let's pull the data, and it's all there and it's all perfect. And I can do an application in like 5 minutes and have it done. So thank you, Ruchi. I'm extremely grateful. And yeah.
It's amazing to work with you. Thank you for the opportunity. And we also had your taxes done. We hadn't gone on extension.
That's right. So I had those done early.
Yeah. Obviously, my clients are all prepared, right? Because we work together often and we have everything ready. But, as I'm supporting other women, some of them don't have their taxes done or numbers, and it's been more of a challenge.
Obviously, my clients are all sorry. I'm screwing things up here. Okay.
It's been more of a challenge to get the applications in for people because they don't know what information to use. They don't have their taxes done. They may not even have a P&L. So it was hard for them to determine what kind of loans and grants were available to them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. So I am going to pull up some of the questions.
I know one of the questions that Lisa asked, and I think, Kim, you mentioned you had the same question, was about the EIDL. So the EIDL, for all of you who don't know, is the Economic Injury Disaster Loan. And that was the one that a lot of people were saying, apply, and you'll get $10,000 for free. So that was one of those misconceptions that I was seeing a lot of. In fact, that EIDL is is a real loan. And the idea was that for those people that were just really desperate for cash, that they were going to provide up to $10,000 as an advance towards the loan. And once more guidance came out, it ended up that there wasn't enough money to be able to do that and support people like they needed. And they limited that to $1,000 per employee. So if you're a sole proprietor, obviously, like, people have been putting one as the number of employees. And that is one that's been really frustrating. I know Lisa's obviously frustrated. Kim, it sounds like you're frustrated. I know that because we've talked about it in our work. And a lot of my other clients are, because they just didn't hear anything and they didn't even know, they knew it was submitted because they got the application number, but that was the last of the communication. And I'll tell you, unfortunately, that's kind of where the communication ends. The positive is I'm finally starting to see that money, the advance grant, roll in. So as of just a couple of days ago, from my clients' perspectives, and I think from a lot of you, you may have seen, the 1,000 or 2 or 3, depending on the number of employees you have, you may have started to see that advance grant come in. And that does not need to be repaid, which is great. But that is meant to be as I said, an advance on an EIDL loan, the Economic Injury Disaster Loan. So what's supposed to happen, and I don't know, they've run out of money. So, the House approved, the Senate approved earlier in the week, the House approved yesterday. So presumably there's more money coming down the road. I'm hearing another $60 billion for the EIDL. I don't know if that's already spoken for from the old applications. I do know that as of even right before this meeting, you could no longer, or at this moment, even apply for the EIDL right now. So those who have already applied, that's wonderful. Those who haven't should go on to the SBA and just regularly check to see if they can apply. And the idea is that money, they will come to you with an offer based on the revenue that you put in your application for a loan. It's a real loan. It's not a grant. It's 3.75% for up to 30 years. If you're a nonprofit, it's 2.75% interest. So it's a really nice low interest rate for those of you who maybe were struggling before and were having a hard time getting a line of credit or a loan that was low interest. This is an opportunity for you to try and get in there if you can. The other thing, I think what people are seeing, though, is they haven't gotten those offers. As I said, that advance grant on the EIDL has just started to roll in, but we're waiting to see if, what kind of loan offers people get for the longer term as well.
Great. Yeah, that's super helpful, Ruchi. So, so if people want to find out about that or even apply, they can still apply now.
They cannot apply right now. I want you to all, those that are interested, I don't know why you wouldn't be, because at a minimum, you can get that $1,000 for yourself, right? But keep checking back on the SBA site. Just Google SBA EIDL. I can also share the link in the group later, along with some helpful articles that will come up during our chat right now, Kim.
Okay, great. That's awesome. Yep. Good. Yeah. And then we have a post from Tracy.
Yeah.
The Act for purposes of loan forgiveness defines payroll costs as not including employer's portion of taxes and the employee's tax withholding. But the SBA in their FAQ says that they interpret payroll costs as gross wages.
Yeah.
Do you have any insights?
Yeah, I definitely have insights. I can clarify that. That was also one of those things that I believe came out and then was clarified. If I recall correctly, there's been a lot of information. So that was Tracy. Is that who that was?
Yeah.
So Tracy is referring to the Paycheck Protection Program. So let's do just a quick overview of what that is, and then we'll get to Tracy's question.
Perfect.
So the Paycheck Protection Program is also a loan, and it's a loan, however, that may be forgiven if it's used in the way that it's intended to. So that is, there's a special calculation for that. And to Tracy's point, it's 2.5 times your average monthly payroll plus state and local payroll taxes plus employee benefits. So those that are self-employed, I'm sorry, but your health insurance does not count. Home utilities, none of those things. I'll talk more about that in the forgiveness piece, the utilities. So what you do, I can talk through different ways of calculating that, those that are S corporations, those that are sole proprietors or single member LLCs. But to clarify Tracy's question, in order to calculate the monthly average payroll, yes, you can take the wages of your employees up to $100,000 per employee, or your sole proprietorship income or a combination of both for sole proprietors like me or single member LLCs like me that do have employees. You take both pieces. You can also, as I said, include the state and local payroll taxes. So like the SUI you'll see on your payroll reports, and you take that and you divide it by 12 to get the monthly average. You multiply it by 2.5. That number, so let's just say that we're talking about a 10,000 monthly average. That number times 2.5 is $25,000. That is the amount that you can apply for in the PPP. Okay, so that's one piece. And now what the goal is we want that to be forgiven. So in order for it to be forgiven, that will be a separate process that you'll have to submit to your bank. There's going to be more guidance on that now. There's very little guidance on that process at this point. But the idea is that you must use that $25,000 I just talked about in my example specifically for payroll costs. At least 75% of it has to be used for payroll costs. And then the rest can also be used for business rent, business utilities, or the interest on your business property that you may own, the mortgage interest, essentially. So what you'll notice is I didn't talk about those that work from home, right? There's not a lot of clarity around that, so people really aren't taking chances, and they're saying you need to use it for those specific categories. So once it's forgiven, you get to keep it, right? And if it's not forgiven, it stays a loan. And it's essentially a very low interest loan. It's a 1% loan over 2 years. And the first 6 months are deferred. Interest will accrue, but you don't have to make payments. So I see it as sort of a low risk for those who are in need of capital, because even if you don't get forgiven, you can use that money to pay off old debt. If you have to, you can use it to invest. You can use it as your emergency fund that you now realize you really need to have for the future.
Right. That's a really great point. Yeah. At 1%, you could take that money. If you had credit card debt you're paying a higher percentage on, pay that off, and you've extended that a bit. So,
Exactly.
And so we have a question, which I knew was coming. How does this apply to solopreneurs? If someone isn't paying themselves payroll and they're a sole proprietorship, how would you calculate?
Yeah, how would you calculate the amount that you can take on the PPP loan, which we forgiven? That's such an excellent question, and I'm glad that I don't know who asked that question, but I'm glad that she brought it up, because that's one of the main misconceptions that I'm hearing about from other women business owners is they feel that because they're a sole proprietor, they don't have a separate tax return. They're not taking payroll because they're not required to. That's not how a sole proprietor or a single member LLC pay themselves. So what the guidance is that you should take your Schedule C form. So the Schedule C form is part of your individual tax return. It's a separate schedule, and it's the schedule that shows your business income and expenses. So you're taking the net income on your 2019 Schedule C form, and you're using that as your annual payroll, and you're dividing by 12 and then multiplying by 2.5 times. So it's actually much more straightforward than when you actually pay employees. I do want to add, however, that what is still unclear is on the forgiveness piece on that, right? There's not a lot of guidance on the forgiveness. Again, they're telling us to use the Schedule C. So there's obviously some intention to forgive it if they're telling us to take that as wages, right? So the idea is we're going to have to understand what they're going to need from us in order to have that forgiven for a sole proprietor. What I'm telling my clients is, for example, if they're taking a $25,000 loan from the PPP, if that's what their calculation turned out to be, I'm suggesting to my clients that they take their owner draw, right? So over the 8 weeks, maybe take 2 owner draws that equal half. That's the only thing I can think of that would sort of show the SBA and the banks that we've used that money for quote unquote payroll.
Nice. Yeah, that's a really great tip. Thanks, Ruchi.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other questions you guys have, be sure that you're posting them in the chat right under this video so we can get to them. And if you're watching the recording of this, you can also post them there. Ruchi is a member of this group, and so, you know, she and I will be looking and monitoring the comments under the video to make sure that we're answering questions after the fact. But
Absolutely.
we have her live right now.
Yeah.
So anything else that's coming up for you guys, let us know. Yeah, Ruchi, I know you had a couple of other things that
I have some other things I think we can talk about. So the other thing that's come up, which was exciting, and some of you may have gotten this, were the individual stimulus checks. So some of you might have just gotten $1,200 in your bank account and not known where that came from, and some of you may have been waiting for it. So the IRS is providing individual stimulus checks for those who make, for individuals who make under $75,000, it's $1,200. For couples who are married filing jointly, those that make under $150,000, they're getting $2,400. And if your income is higher than that, that amount will go down and at some point just go away and you won't see that money. But for those who have not, who either don't have their banking instructions on file with the IRS, or those who maybe haven't filed 2019 because of the extension and maybe just haven't seen that money, you can go on to the IRS website. There's an area called Get My Payment, and you can just check what the status is. You can enter in your banking instructions to make sure you have an opportunity to get that money. So I recommend for those who are in those income categories that you do that. Take advantage of that amount instead of having a paper check, which may take weeks and weeks and weeks.
Yeah, that's great. And, you know, I just feel compelled to make a comment about that because I felt really heartbroken recently talking to a few of my friends and people inside of this community who are women business owners, and they haven't been on top of their finances and they haven't been on top of their taxes. So they haven't paid tax in the last couple of years, for example. And so they're not able to get the stimulus checks. They're not able to apply for these things. And I just really want to encourage you to not beat yourself up at all, you guys. That's not what I'm saying. And take an opportunity to look at what are some of the things you can do right now to get right with your money. And, you know, take some time really setting some goals around getting your finances, you know, at least buttoned up and organized in a way that you can, I would call it, step into your next level of leadership around having a right relationship with money. And, you know, as I said, I'm so lucky to have Ruchi in my corner. I wanted to share her with all of you. I know Ruchi has availability, right, to take
I have a
couple of new.
So, you know, we're here for those who need support, and honestly, even just on the group for those who aren't at that place, but we are just here to support women.
Yeah, exactly. And she and I are dreaming up more ways of supporting you, creating things like prosperity circles and, you know, spaces for us to come together as women business owners and really get a handle on our finances and get those things in order, so that what I found is it just gives me a sense of peace and calm about it all that I didn't have before, because I just didn't know. Like, I didn't know what I didn't know, and I didn't know the questions to ask. And I was kind of like, I had an ex-husband that would handle all the finances. And so I got into some bad habits around it. And, you know, my want for you is that you just feel really solid about your work and your money. And I think it's a big blind spot and a sore spot, you know, for a lot of us. It seems to be, especially for women. So, you know, just on that point, like, if you would be interested in joining something like a prosperity circle, can you just type in the comments prosperity circle, and I'll get your name and be sure to follow up with you when that offer comes around. It would be a space like I was talking about, for us to communicate and converse and share and get ideas and tips and guidance and on how to really get right with your money, get your money solid, get caught up with all of those things that you need to do.
Yeah.
And if you need, suggestions on how to hire support, if that's the right thing for you, just type prosperity circle in the comments.
That's great. I'm excited.
All right. Yeah. And then Diana posted,
No, go ahead. I'd love to hear what Diana has.
Yeah, Diana said, for those of us who are solopreneurs, what are our options? Maybe I don't want a loan, and are there other options?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's and this is something that Kim and I were going to talk about anyway, which there's a ton of grant of opportunities available. So not only the private ones, like Sarah Blakely has one called Red Backpack, that I know is closed right now for applications, reopening May 4th. And you guys have probably heard Facebook's doing something. I Fund Women. I think Google Ads is doing something. Kim, you might have more of the private ones that you've,
Yeah, there's a thread. There's a thread in the announcements. So if you go into the announcement section of this group, you'll see there's the thread that we've started. Some of those are, on hold or no longer available. But anytime any of us hear about something, we post it there, and I've been posting there. Alice is a website. That's right. Yeah, that I also posted in there that has continuous resources available. Now, the thing with several of those is several of them aren't for sole proprietors. They're for people that have at least 2 employees. But some of them are, early on, Bumble was doing something, and you could be a sole proprietor. It didn't matter. They wanted to know more about your community. Like, do you have a community of people, that you're supporting as well? And so, I'm really committed anytime I hear about anything to share it. And I would love for you all to be sharing it as well.
Yeah. And the other thing, Kim, just to sort of add to what we just talked about, is even the freelancers unions, check out your local freelancers unions. And also, we've been so focused on the federal, the EIDL and the PPP. Some of us are forgetting about the local ones. So I really recommend you check out what's going on locally with loans and grants. So if you just sort of Google COVID-19 small business funding, and like, I'm in NYC, or I'm in Connecticut, but I'm from NYC, and Kim is in Austin. A lot of you are all over the country. So just figure out what's going on in your local states and cities and communities that, there's a ton that is probably not even being looked at because of the focus on these federal ones, as I mentioned.
That's a great point. Yeah. And, I have a couple of local groups and just enthusiasts who are creating spreadsheets and keeping track of this stuff. And we definitely have some Austin-based entrepreneur funds and grants. We have Texas-based and Texas-based women entrepreneurs. Like, there's actually a lot of focus right now on women and minority entrepreneurs. And, one thing somebody told me, I was just like, oh, I sighed, but they're like, the majority, what do they say? 80% of the money that's been given out so far has been to male-owned businesses, like only 20% to female or minority owned. And so, and the smaller businesses aren't getting the same amount of money as the larger businesses are getting, even though it's technically a small business. It's like, your income can be $5 million and you're technically a small business. So those of us that are making 6 figures or, even below that, for some people, it's really hard. But I would say, don't give up. I think there's a lot of frenzy and people really talking about that now. Like, come on, small businesses are the backbone of the American economy, and we really need to support small business owners. And so I would say, just apply for everything you can. Like,
give it a try.
Be tenacious. Why not? Yeah.
What I realized that I should have talked about is, for those who have applied for the PPP, a lot of you know that the funds ran out, right? So you may have seen last week where there was a big announcement. So actually, some great developments. Many of you probably have heard this, but just, if you haven't, the Senate approved additional funding on Tuesday. The House approved it yesterday. So that means it's gone through what it needs to go through. And so I feel that imminently we're going to hear that PPP has opened up again, and hopefully EIDL. For those of you who have applied to the PPP and haven't received the money, your application is still at the bank. So I hope that you've gotten some emails. I know a lot of my clients and a lot of my colleagues and other women who I work with or have been talking to are with bigger banks like Chase and Bank of America, and they were just not communicative, and people were really upset, including myself, very upset as to not knowing. It was like a big black hole. And they have actually publicly apologized to I know Chase has, I can't speak for Bank of America, they have publicly apologized for the way they've handled things, and they had now created 4 stages of the application process. And so now you have a sense of where you are in the line. And I've had people go from stage 1, which was, hey, I'm just letting you know that you're at the back of the line, and I just, you may not get through with more funding, so go find a smaller bank. And then I've even had clients who are in stage 3, which means I have everything that I need from you, and as soon as funds open up, we're going to submit to the SBA to get this loan. Because what I didn't mention was, for the EIDL, we talked about going directly to the SBA. For the PPP, you have to go through a bank, and they then approve your loan application, and then they submit it to the SBA, and then that's when you get the second approval you need. So you have to go through the bank first. So those who have already applied, your application should be in line, and you should have received communication. I will tell you that I was a little bit disheartened personally about the way the first round of funding was handled. I do feel, in my opinion, it's just my opinion, that the bigger banks were favoring the larger loans because it's a lot less administrative hassle for them, right? If they're getting paid the same amount for looking at 30 loan applications versus looking at one large one, I don't know why they would look at the 30, other than the fact that these small businesses were really suffering. So I have recommended to some of my clients and colleagues to go to some of the smaller banks. I have actually found an amazing guy here. Those who are in my neighborhood or my neck of the woods, reach out to me directly and I will connect you with him. He's amazing at a small bank here in New York. And they are doing, he was up all night just calling clients, and they have a whole, literally, I was getting emails from him at 3 a.m. My clients got calls from him at 6 a.m. after writing him an email. And I don't know if it's okay to name names, so I'm not, but I will be happy to share that information for those in the New York area, because it's got to be a local. He's only taking on non-clients that are local. So just try other banks. If you haven't had luck with yours, try one of the smaller banks. They may take, you might have to open an account with them, but so what? They're helping you navigate this process and get that loan, and that's what matters right now.
Yeah, that's a really great point. And so many smaller banks have no fee accounts, so it's just an application process. It's not, you don't have to pay anything to open an account. Many banks, don't have a minimum balance either, and things like that. So it's totally worth it. Yeah. If you're thinking about what you could be getting as just free money, right? So, so it's worth it. Great. So you can search online, Diana, for, you have to go through the bank to get the PPP loan application, right, Ruchi?
Yes, you do. The application's available online, but in order to apply, you must go through a bank.
Okay, so I would search for what is exactly the phrasing of PPP?
Oh, for the PPP, SBA approved banks you could do.
And what does PPP stand for? So she could search for that.
Sure. Paycheck Protection Program.
Paycheck Protection Program loan application. So search in Google for that. That'll come up. We have a couple of other questions. So someone said, I haven't started my own business, but I want to learn. Don't know if that counts. Absolutely. Great. Welcome. So glad that you're here. Are there resources for coming up with ideas for remote small businesses? So if you haven't started a business yet, and you want to create a small business that is working virtually, I would be happy to talk with you about that. It's something we definitely talk about a lot inside of this group, especially businesses that, you want to make some kind of positive difference in the world. So if you want to talk with me, I'm actually offering complimentary impact sessions right now, and you can apply for one of those at bit.ly/impact with Kim. And I'll put that link in the chat, but bit.ly/impact with Kim. And I'd be happy to chat with you about what you love doing and what your ideas are for a business. And someone is in North Central Massachusetts. So again, I think look for a smaller bank in that area, not one of the big banks. And yeah, I think everybody's really trying to help small business owners right now. So, so lean into that.
I wanted to mention one other thing. I don't know if there's another question or if we have another minute, Kim.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the one thing we didn't really talk about were those of you just really struggling financially, do what you can to reach out to your providers, your creditors. If you're having trouble paying your credit card, the credit cards are really working with you. And you know what? You might get one person and they say one thing, call again, get a different person. I have heard multiple stories. Either they're telling you no payments for 2 months, no interest, no fees. They might do it for a month. I heard that someone was able to get a very low interest rate for the rest of the year from one of their credit card companies. So call them and ask what they can do for you, and call again. If you don't get the answer you hear, trust me, try it. Also,
that's great.
Yeah, mortgage, obviously with your landlords, you guys know, call them. They're also struggling, right? So call them, see what they can do. And also with the mortgage companies, many of them are offering a 3-month deferment. It's not a forgiveness, it's a deferment. So if you can't afford it, they may make it very easy for you to add those 3 months on to the end of your 30-year mortgage, those of you who have a 30 or whatever the term is, right? So if you just want to hold on to that money, even if you have the money and you want to hold on, if you're struggling a little and you're just nervous, call them. They will work with you. And student loans too. I'm hearing you call the companies and see what they can do for you. They may not charge you, interest. They may defer that. Just see, they're all offering different things. So I just urge you to make the calls. Don't give up. Call your cable company. Think about what you're spending money on that you just don't need. Your recurring charges. Those are things Kim and I look at all the time. And, we're like, are you using that? Let's get rid of it. We don't even look at, what we're spending a lot of the time. It's just coming out of our accounts. Go in there and look at what is being charged. Some of those things you probably haven't used in months or maybe over a year. So,
Yeah, that's a great comment. Like, I actually saw that my internet service provider was offering a special deal to new people that was like $30 less a month than what I'm paying for the same service. And so I called them up and said, look, I've been a customer for 3 years, and I see that you have this other offer. Is there anything you can do with me on my account? And, I was just looking at, like, just in the name of fairness, it's like $30 less a month. And they totally did. They totally just cut my bill. They brought it down. So, it's like, wow, if I didn't just ask, nothing would have happened, And sometimes I think like, oh, it's just a small amount, or, I think this is where the subscription-based services can really get us. Is like, oh, it's just $14 a month, or it's $7.99 a month, but all those little 14s and $7.99s end up adding up to hundreds of dollars. And so, just looking at that,
That's exactly right. I mean, you and I do that all the time. And people you think, okay, that $30, Kim, what is that a year? It's $360, right? I mean, when you put it in those terms, I was talking to another client, and she shared this funny post with me, which I had put on my Instagram. I think, I don't remember the exact number, but if you saved, I think it's like $29 a day, that's $10,000 in a year. How quickly those little charges add up. I know that was powerful, right? That is powerful. And now is the time to take control of your numbers and pay attention to them. And this is, it's a lesson for all of us, right? It's not about being hard on ourselves, but it's a lesson to say, let's just be on top of this. Like, let's own it.
Yeah. And I think so many of my clients that I'm talking to are really taking time to look at what are the priorities, how do they get right with their money? Like I talked about, how do they focus on what's the most important thing for their business right now. Some people are looking at career shifts, and other people are looking at starting a business and thinking, oh, I might be next to get laid off, or, so how do I get proactive about that? And it's very interesting, like in this time where you would think people aren't spending money, a lot of people are actually hiring me to help them work through the issues of this time and make decisions and get clear and get focused and start new businesses, or look at, ramping up their personal brand because they know they're going to be on a job search soon. So, now is the time. I know many of us don't have a lot of extra time. Like, that's a farce, especially those of you with kids and stuff at home. You might feel like you don't have more personal time. And yet it is a good time where we're forced to be inside to kind of be reflective and introspective and to think about, okay, what's the next step on my path, and how do I want to create the next version of myself, my career, my life, really, my purpose. So,
yeah.
So we're here to support you in any way we can around that. All right. I'm not seeing any other questions, Ruchi. So thank you so much for being with us today. Thank you for being in my life and the wisdom and the guidance that you bring to me. I'm so appreciative. And, because I have you, I'm actually able to serve all these world-changing women. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. And if you guys have any other questions, just post them in the group, and I'll post some articles and resources for you as well.
Yeah, sounds good. And please, as you hear of grant opportunities and funding, put them in that thread so that we can all be sharing. I'm just trusting that there's more than enough for all of us, so we don't need to hold on to those things. Mm-hmm. It's great to share, lean into this community, ask for support, post questions that you have. And, I'm really committed to creating the spaces and getting those questions answered however I can. So thank you. Y'all have a fantastic day and weekend, and we'll see you back here soon. Bye.
Bye.